So it's another year, and it's another time we get to take a look at an iOS device and an Android device and basically see how they kind of compare and take a look at some of the key differences that I think might be a big deal between both these, operating systems. And it's funny that this year there's probably a lot more things that are closer now than there ever been before. And I think it really comes down to the USB port that's at the bottom. Now, call me corny or whatever, but I generally do think that this USB-C port at the very bottom of these iPhones is probably one of the biggest changes we've seen from Apple in a long period of time. And I've used one of the biggest things I used to use a lot on my Android phones was the USB Type-C port and connecting it to different accessories and different things like that. But now having the ability to do it on my iPhone means that there's a lot more overlap between these two. And I do think a lot of the reasons I would go and use my Android phone in a pinch, maybe connecting to a USB Type-C microphone, I can pretty much do that on my iPhone now, which is very, very nice. So there's a lot of overlap here too. But also when it comes down to the lock screen, there's a lot more customizing we can do inside of our lock screen now on both operating systems. So if we take a look at one of the big ones starting off here, if you hold down on both lock screens, you'll get into their both basically their customized panels. So this one's a little bit different. You have to hold down here, and then you can click customize lock screen and it basically comes up. And this is here on One UI, this is here on stock Android. And basically there's a lot more overlap here for sure. I actually do think though in some ways that the customizing panel of our lock screen for Android I think might be a little bit better. I do like the more different type of clock styles you have here on your Android device. So if you take a look at up here, there's different like fonts we can kind of change, but they're not the same, but there's like a lot more overlap here for sure on iPhones. But you can see on Androids there's a little bit more customizing we can do. Like I do feel like all the color schemes and like the everything like that is super nice. You can also change the time like this, which is really cool. I do prefer this one. This one I don't even understand at all. It's kind of complicated. This one's actually very nice. I do like this one a lot. So I'll definitely say on the Android front, there's probably a little bit more customizing we can do on the Google Pixel, like on stock Android and on One UI. But I will say Apple kind of brought it in first. I think iOS 16 brought it, and Google ended up bringing it, I think, on Android 13 or something like that, or Android 14. So I'm glad they brought it in, but that was another big thing that kind of ended up happening here between both versions of operating systems. But not all is perfect. I do think there are some things that might be a little bit better inside of iOS in some cases. But one of the biggest things that are still going on right now is the AI side of things. And I will say on the Google front, there's probably more advancements and improvements that are going on inside of the AI side, inside of Google Pixels, inside of Samsung, than inside of Apple. But we're still waiting for iOS 18. We're waiting for those new changes to come out. So that in and of itself is another very, very big thing that's going to be kind of hopefully coming out sooner than later. I would also like to add, when it comes down to the whole entire ecosystem of emulators and things like that, this is something I talked about in the last 2 years. We have gotten massive improvements on the emulator side inside of Apple now. So although Android I think is still ahead, you still have some big size emulators like that can even do like kind of current consoles inside of Android. There are still some really big improvements inside of our particular Android or inside of our iPhones. So now within the iPhone App Store, we can download applications like the Delta game emulator, which is really cool. We have this type of capability now, which we've never had before. And this in and of itself, once again, is another very, very cool thing. And there's also like a PlayStation 1 emulator that you can download here, which isn't even that great, but it gets the job done. There are lots of improvements here for sure within the last year. And I am so happy that we have this type of capability, even in some form or fashion, inside of our iPhones now. Now, on the Android side, I would definitely say a lot of the basic capability that we've had on Android phones for years is still something I love. A lot of Android phones do give you reverse wireless charging, not my Google Pixel 8a, but a lot of current phones do give that to you. And although it's not like a Android feature, it's a hardware thing, a lot of Android phones are giving you that type of capability. On top of that, I will say basic things that we've had for years, like split screen multitasking, we are still having here. And that's something that we've never had on any iPhone natively. And I do feel like at some point they should be adding it. I think split screen multitasking is very cool. It's like one of the best things about Android phones. They allow you to do it on so many other operating systems. So it's weird we still don't have it inside of our Androids, but it is what it is. There's not really that big of a thing here for the most part. Another big thing, a lot of Android phones are starting to kind of get better inside of the operating system when it comes down to software updates. So we've always had security updates and things like that added for years now, but there's a big chance where Androids could end up competing very well next to some iPhones in terms of operating software updates. So for the next couple of years, we could be seeing phones like the Google Pixel 8a, some other phones like that, end up getting software support for many, many more years. even probably lasting even longer than some iPhones. There's a chance the Pixel 8a may last as long, if not longer, than the iPhone 15. So this in and of itself is another very crazy thing that could end up happening here too. So not the biggest deal in the world, but that is another big thing to keep in mind there. Now finally, when it comes down to their apps and everything, their ecosystems, they're very different, but there's a lot more overlap here for sure. One of the biggest things that I talked about for years was on Android, you were basically getting the ability of installing your own APK files and your own files like that. But keep in mind that Apple is starting to open up a little bit, and they have just now enabled third-party app stores inside of certain countries. It could mean that this could happen to this country too. It could happen all over the place. So it's going to be one of those things we're going to have to kind of wait and see what happens as well. But that in of itself, once again, is another very, very crazy thing that's going to be happening here too. So overall, what I'll definitely tell you is that I think operating systems on both are great, but I don't know if there's like one that I'd look at as being the ultimate, like this is the best operating system of all time. And the reason why I think that and the reason why I say that is because both of these have their own quirks and cool little features inside that I think give them a slight edge on one another. Now with iOS, I think one of the biggest edges they may have over something like the Google Pixel or an Android is the fact that there's a lot more frequent updates, I would say, that are just more consistent for the most part than on the Android side. I think you get security updates all the time on Android, but I do feel like on iOS you're just kind of more engrossed in the ecosystem, and I feel like for the most part, whenever an update comes out, there's more of a, I guess, like a community behind those updates. I feel like there's more people talking about it, and I do feel like that makes Apple kind of more aware of issues and bugs that can happen within their ecosystem and their situations. And with Google, I don't know how long it would take for them to fix it. There was the photo bug that was happening, resurfacing old photos. Apple is pretty quick to fix it. If that happened on Google, I don't know how long it would take them. Maybe they'd be quicker, but that's just one example of it. I also do feel like the whole entire ecosystem has improved a lot the last year. Apple is opening a lot of things up, and I think that's mostly because they have to legally. I think they're monopolizing too many things at one point, in my opinion. So it looks like there's a lot of improvements there, which I'm really happy about. So I definitely do like Apple a lot because of those particular situations. I think with the Google Pixel side, with the Google Pixel 8a, I think, or inside of the Android side in general, I feel like Android has also kind of like, improved a lot when it comes down to software updates. A lot of Android manufacturers now, like I said, there wasn't really a lot of things that I hated about Android, right? I feel like it was really good for the most part, but they just weren't supporting their phones as long as the other, competition. But now the fact that Google and Samsung have now improved their software longevity and is now supporting their phones for like 7 years plus, this is some really, really big stuff. And this makes me very happy to have a phone like a Google Pixel or a Samsung, because I know that even if my phone doesn't come out with a certain feature now, or there's a certain thing that I don't like with it, whatever, there's a big chance that within the next 7 years, there's probably going to be some improvements. And although Apple has always been supporting their phones for a long period of time, I really do like the fact that the Google Pixels and Samsungs and a lot of Android phones are starting to improve their software longevity on their devices as of this point. So overall, that's kind of how I see iOS and Android kind of competing in 2024. If you have any other thoughts or questions, please let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that'll mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.